Sarah stood behind the counter of the busy restaurant, balancing a tray full of glasses. The clinking sounds of silverware, laughter of wealthy customers, and the occasional sharp voice of the head chef filled the air. It was just another long shift for her, another day of pretending everything was fine. She wore her usual black uniform, hair tied back neatly, and a tired smile glued to her face. No one noticed the sadness in her eyes. No one knew what kind of dreams she once had. She was only 24 but felt much older. Every day began early and ended late. She worked double shifts whenever she could, hoping to save enough to keep paying rent, to buy medicine for her mother, and maybe, just maybe, to save a little something for herself. But dreams cost money, and Sarah didn't have any to spare. What most people didn't know, or had forgotten, was that Sarah had once been a piano prodigy. As a child, her fingers danced over piano keys like they were born for it. She had started learning when she was just 5 years old. Her father, a kind and soft-spoken man, had bought a second-hand piano for her. He believed in her more than anyone else. He used to sit beside her during every practice, humming along as she played. Sarah still remembered those early mornings, when the sun peeked through the window, lighting up her little hands as they moved over the keys. Back then, life felt like a fairy tale. By the time she was 12, she had already won several local competitions. Music schools noticed her talent. A special scholarship was offered to her for one of the most prestigious music academies in the country. She dreamed of traveling the world, playing in grand concert halls, moving people with her music. She practiced every single day, never tiring, because the piano wasn't just an instrument. It was her home. It was where she felt most alive. But life, as it often does, had other plans. When Sarah was 17, her father died in a tragic car accident. It was sudden. One minute he was there, and the next, everything changed. Her world, once filled with music, color, and hope, turned gray and quiet. Her mother, already weak from years of health issues, became seriously ill with the shock. The hospital bills piled up quickly, and Sarah, still in high school, had to make a choice. She let go of the scholarship. She let go of music. No one begged her to stop playing. But how could she continue when there was no food on the table, no electricity at home some nights, and a sick mother who needed help every day? The piano, once her closest friend, now sat silently in the corner of their living room, gathering dust. She couldn't even look at it anymore. It reminded her of everything she had lost. She got a job as a waitress in a small cafe, then moved on to fancier places with better pay. The money was never enough, but she managed. Her fingers, once so skilled at expressing feelings through melodies, now only held trays and counted tips. The beauty of her music was replaced by the dull rhythm of survival. Years passed. She moved to New York City because the jobs paid more, even though living there was a struggle. She rented a small, crumbling apartment in a noisy neighborhood. Her neighbors were kind but noisy. The walls were thin and sleep was rare. But Sarah never complained. She got up every day, put on her uniform, tied her hair back, and smiled. The restaurant she worked at now was one of the most expensive in the city. Wealthy businessmen, celebrities, and politicians dined there. She was good at her job, fast, polite, and invisible. That's how she liked it. The less people knew about her, the better. Occasionally, someone would ask what she did before becoming a waitress. She always smiled and said, "Nothing much." She never told them about the concerts she played or the awards she won. She didn't want their pity. She didn't want their fake interest. But sometimes, late at night, when she returned home exhausted, she would open her laptop and watch videos of pianists performing on grand stages. Her eyes would follow every note, her ears catching every subtle expression. Her fingers would twitch slightly, remembering how it once felt. And for a moment, her tiny room would fill with invisible music, just in her mind. Then she would close. the laptop, take a deep breath, and remind herself that life had moved on. One night as she walked home after a 10-hour shift, a soft tune floated from a window nearby. Someone was playing the piano. The notes were clumsy and slow, clearly a beginner. But Sarah stopped. She stood on the sidewalk, staring at that glowing window as the music wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. She told herself to keep walking. Sometimes she thought about what her life would have been if the accident had never happened. Would she be famous now? Would she be traveling the world, performing for large audiences, wearing beautiful gowns, instead of this stained black uniform? But those were just daydreams, pointless ones. She had a mother to take care of and rent to pay. Dreams didn't matter when your fridge was empty. She didn't hate her life. She didn't blame anyone. But there was an ache deep inside her that never went away. An ache that came from silencing the part of herself that had once sung so loudly. The other waiters and staff liked her, but no one knew her story. She kept to herself, always kind, always quiet. Sometimes she hummed a melody while cleaning up after hours. One of the kitchen workers once told her she had a pretty voice, and she had smiled politely, saying thank you. But inside, she wanted to cry. Even her voice missed the piano. At the restaurant, customers often made rude or thoughtless remarks. Some treated her like she was invisible, others like she was stupid. She was used to it. One customer even laughed once and said, "A pretty girl like you should have tried acting instead of waiting tables." She didn't reply. What would be the point? But through it all, Sarah held on. Not because she had hope, but because she didn't have a choice. Life had handed her a different script than the one she'd prepared for. And she was learning how to live with it. Still, every now and then, when the restaurant was quiet and the lights were low, she would glance at the grand piano near the bar. It sat there unused most nights, a decorative piece, dusted once a week by a cleaner who probably didn't know what it was really worth. Guests rarely noticed it. But Sarah noticed. She always noticed. Her heart would beat a little faster whenever she walked past it, even though her hands stayed still. She never dared to touch it. But that was about to change. Life, unpredictable and strange, was about to throw her into a moment she never asked for. A moment that would open old wounds and change everything. And it would all begin on a night she thought would be just like any other. It was a cold Friday evening when the restaurant buzzed with a different kind of energy. The usual clatter of plates and the murmur of polite conversations were replaced by an air of excitement and expectation. Tonight was special. Leonard Kane, the millionaire real estate mogul known for his ruthless business tactics and larger-than-life personality, was hosting one of his famous parties in the private room of the restaurant. The staff had been warned weeks ago to prepare for a night unlike any other. Every detail had to be perfect. The silver polished until it shined, the finest wines chilled, the food prepared by the best chefs. Sarah, who usually stayed in the background during busy shifts, found herself feeling nervous. This was not her usual crowd. The guests tonight were rich, famous, and powerful. They were people who lived in a world far removed from hers. Sarah had learned early on to keep her head down and her voice soft whenever these kinds of nights happened. The millionaires and celebrities rarely noticed the waiters unless something went wrong. But tonight, something was different. Leonard Kane was a tall man, with sharp eyes that seemed to look right through people. He had a booming laugh that filled the room, and a way of making everyone feel small around him. Stories about his cruel jokes and public insults were common among restaurant staff. He enjoyed showing off his power and wealth, often at the expense of others. As the party got underway, Sarah moved from table to table, serving drinks and plates of food. She felt eyes on her more than usual, curious, amused, sometimes even mocking. She tried to ignore it, focusing on her work. But then she heard it. Her name, Leonard Kane was standing near the grand piano in the corner of the room. He was talking loudly, his voice carrying across the room. "Hey, you there! The pretty waitress! Come here!" Sarah froze. Her heart pounded. She tried to keep working, pretending not to hear. But Kane's voice grew louder, and soon several guests were looking her way, waiting for her to respond. She took a deep breath and approached him slowly, trying to keep her face calm. Kane looked her up and down with a sneer. "So, what do you do besides bringing drinks and wiping tables? Ever done anything real with your life?" The room grew quiet, waiting for her answer. Sarah's throat felt dry. She wanted to disappear. But before she could say anything, one of the other waiters trying to help mentioned softly, "She used to play the piano, sir." Kane's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Oh, really? A waitress who thinks she's a pianist? Let's see if she can back up her story." He pointed toward the grand piano. "Play something, right now. Let's give everyone a good laugh." Sarah's face burned with embarrassment. She shook her head, whispering, "No, please, I don't want to." But Kane was not used to being refused. "Play, or don't come back to work here." His voice was sharp, leaving no room for argument. Guests began to whisper and laugh quietly. Some looked curious, others were openly mocking. Sarah felt trapped. The spotlight was suddenly on her, and all she wanted was to disappear. Her hands trembled as she walked toward the piano. Every step felt heavier than the last. Her eyes scanned the room. Faces were watching her. Some amused, some judgmental, and a few indifferent. She wanted to scream, to run away, but she knew it was impossible. She sat down at the piano bench, her fingers hovering over the keys. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. At first her fingers were slow, uncertain. The sound was soft, barely more than a whisper. But as the music grew, so did her confidence. Her fingers moved with grace and skill, bringing life to a piece that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. It was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece she had loved since she was a child. The guests who had been laughing moments before fell silent. The chatter stopped. The only sound was the music, pure, emotional, and powerful. Sarah played with every ounce of feeling she had kept locked inside for years. Her mind drifted back to those early days with her father, the mornings spent practicing, the encouragement, the dreams. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she did not stop. She wanted the music to speak for her, to tell the story she could not. Slowly, the room began to change. People who had been ready to mock her now sat stunned. Some had tears in their eyes. The arrogance in Leonard Kane's face disappeared, replaced by disbelief. He sat frozen, unable to look away. When the last note faded, the room was silent for a long moment. Then a few guests began to applaud, softly at first, then louder. The clapping grew until it filled the entire room. Sarah stood up quietly, avoiding everyone's eyes. She walked away from the piano, her heart pounding not just from fear but from something else. Pride. Back in the kitchen, her co-workers were stunned. "Did you see that?" one whispered. "She's amazing." But Sarah didn't want attention. She just wanted to get through the night. She cleaned tables with shaking hands, her mind racing. What had just happened? How had she forgotten she still had this talent? And why had no one seen it before? Later, when the party was over and the guests had left, Sarah found herself standing near the piano again. She ran her fingers over the keys, feeling the cool smoothness beneath her skin. For the first time in years, she felt alive. But she also knew that this night had changed everything. The video someone secretly recorded and posted online was already going viral. People were talking about the waitress who had shocked a millionaire and silenced a room full of powerful guests with her music. Sarah wasn't sure what would come next. Would Leonard Kane try to humiliate her again? Would the restaurant keep her on? Or was this the moment her life would take a new turn? One thing was clear. Sarah could no longer hide from the music inside her. The moment Sarah's fingers first touched the piano keys that night, something inside her began to awaken. A part of herself she thought she had lost forever. She sat there, her heart pounding, hands trembling slightly as the first soft notes escaped the piano. The room, filled with well-dressed guests chatting and laughing just moments before, suddenly grew quiet. All eyes were fixed on her, the waitress who had been forced to play by the arrogant millionaire. At first her playing was tentative, as if she were waking from a long sleep. Her fingers felt rusty and unsure, but as the music flowed, so did her confidence. Her hands moved with a grace and precision that only years of hard work and passion could create. The delicate melody of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major filled the room, soft and haunting, carrying a depth of feeling that went beyond words. Guests stopped their conversations and turned their attention entirely to her. Some leaned forward, captivated by the unexpected beauty in the music. Others closed their eyes, letting the melody wash over them. Sarah herself felt a wave of emotions rise within her. Pain, hope, loss, and strength, all mingling in the music she played. The music was no longer just notes on a page. It was a story. Her story. The arrogant laughter and mocking glances she had faced just moments before vanished. Instead, the room was wrapped in a silence so complete it felt almost sacred. Even Leonard Kane, the millionaire who had ordered her to play, sat frozen in his seat. His usual smug expression was replaced with shock and disbelief. The man who enjoyed humiliating others now looked small and speechless. As Sarah played, memories flooded back to her. She remembered sitting beside her father in their small living room, watching him smile as her fingers glided over the piano. She remembered the hours she spent practicing, pushing herself to perfect each piece. But she also remembered the day everything changed. The day her father died. The day her music stopped. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she did not stop. She poured all her feelings into the music. Her fingers danced across the keys with passion and grace, as if trying to tell the audience all the things she could not say aloud. The haunting melody filled the room, touching the hearts of everyone present. When the last note faded, the silence lingered for a moment, heavy and profound. Then, slowly, a few guests began to clap. The applause grew louder and louder, spreading like wildfire through the room. Some guests stood to give her a standing ovation. Sarah stood quietly, bowing her head slightly but keeping her eyes down. She felt a mixture of pride, relief, and disbelief. The other waiters who had been watching from the sidelines whispered among themselves. "She's incredible," one said softly. "Who knew?" Kane finally found his voice, but it was weaker than usual. "Well, I didn't expect that," he muttered, his face flushed with embarrassment. Sarah left the piano and returned to her duties, but the room still buzzed with excitement. Guests talked quietly about the performance, some approaching her with words of praise. She smiled politely but felt awkward. This was not her world. She was just a waitress. She didn't belong in the spotlight, but the night was far from over. Unknown to Sarah, a guest had secretly recorded her performance and posted it online. Within hours, the video began to spread. People around the city, and soon across the country, watched in awe as the waitress who shocked a millionaire played a piece of classical music with extraordinary talent. News outlets picked up the story, calling it a rising star hidden in plain sight. Comments flooded in from strangers praising her skill and expressing support for her journey. For the first time in years, Sarah's music was heard and admired beyond the walls of the restaurant. At home that night, Sarah sat on her small bed staring at her phone. She had never expected this attention. Messages from music teachers, agents, and even old acquaintances poured in. Some offered scholarships, others invited her to perform. It was overwhelming. She felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. Meanwhile, Leonard Kane was dealing with his own turmoil. His plan to embarrass a lowly waitress had backfired spectacularly. Instead of humiliation, he had unwittingly given Sarah a stage, and the world was watching. Kane's usual arrogance was replaced with frustration and a bruised ego. Determined to save face, he sent a message to Sarah, offering an apology and a sponsorship for her music career. Sarah read the message carefully. Part of her wanted to reject him outright, remembering his cruel tone and the humiliation she had felt. But another part hesitated. Could this be the opportunity she had been waiting for? She knew she had to be cautious. Kane's world was not her world. Around this time, an unexpected visitor appeared. At one of her shifts, an elderly man introduced himself as Mr. Thompson, a retired concert pianist who had been at the party that night. He had been deeply moved by Sarah's playing and wanted to offer his help. Mr. Thompson was kind and patient. He told Sarah stories of his own struggles and triumphs and offered to mentor her. He arranged for her to attend free master classes and even lent her sheet music and practice space. For the first time in years, Sarah felt hopeful. She began practicing. Again, slowly at first. Her fingers ached, her muscles were stiff, but the music began to flow once more. Every day she felt stronger and more confident. At the restaurant, life continued, but Sarah's world was changing. Her co-workers treated her differently now, some with admiration, others with jealousy. Some customers recognized her from the video and approached her with words of encouragement. Despite the newfound attention, Sarah remained humble. She knew the road ahead would be hard. She had to balance work, practice, and caring for her mother. But for the first time she felt that her dream was not lost. The music inside her, once silent and forgotten, was alive again. After the night of the party, when Sarah's piano performance unexpectedly went viral, her life began to change in ways she had never imagined. But change, even good change, is not always easy. It came with its own challenges and surprises, and Sarah had to face them one by one. At first, Sarah was overwhelmed by the attention. People from all over the city, even the country, were watching her. Messages poured in on her phone, some from strangers praising her talent, others from music teachers and professionals offering help. She felt a mix of excitement and fear. Excitement because she finally had a chance to follow her dream again, and fear because the spotlight was uncomfortable and unfamiliar. For years, she had hidden her talent, living quietly and working hard just to get by. Now she was being noticed, and not just by kind people, but also by those who wanted to take advantage. Her job at the restaurant became difficult in ways she hadn't expected. Some co-workers admired her. They congratulated her quietly and told her she deserved all the praise. But others were jealous and resentful. They whispered behind her back, saying she was getting special treatment or that she thought she was better than everyone else. A few customers who had heard about the video came to see if she was really as talented as everyone said. Sarah felt the pressure of expectations mounting. Leonard Kane, the millionaire who had forced her to play that night, had not forgotten about her either. After his initial embarrassment, he sent a formal apology, but it wasn't as sincere as it sounded. He wanted to control the situation, hoping to use Sarah's newfound fame to improve his own image. He offered to sponsor her career, promising money, connections, and opportunities. But Sarah was wary. She remembered how cruel and arrogant he had been that night, and she didn't want to be used. She wanted to succeed on her own terms. Meanwhile, Sarah's mother was growing weaker. The hospital bills were still high, and Sarah was torn between her responsibilities at home and the chance to rebuild her music career. Every day was a struggle to balance work, practice, and care for her mother. But Sarah refused to give up. One day, as she practiced on the old piano she had brought from home, Sarah received a phone call from Mr. Thompson, the retired concert pianist who had offered to mentor her. He had arranged an opportunity for her to audition at a respected music academy. It was a chance to study under professional teachers and to perform in front of real audiences again. The audition was nerve-wracking. Sarah hadn't played in front of people in years, and she worried that her skills might have faded. But as she sat down at the piano, memories of her childhood and the night at the party flooded her mind. She played with passion and precision, her fingers moving confidently across the keys. The panel of judges listened in silence, clearly impressed. A few days later, Sarah received the news she had hoped for. She was accepted into the academy on a partial scholarship. It wasn't full support, but it was enough to help her get started. Sarah was overjoyed but also aware of the hard work ahead. She would still have to juggle her job, her family responsibilities, and her studies. At the academy, Sarah met other students from all over the world. Some were wealthy and confident, others were shy and nervous like her. She quickly realized that while her talent was strong, she needed to rebuild her technique and learn new skills. The teachers were strict but encouraging, pushing her to reach her full potential. Sarah practiced every day, often late into the night. She was determined to prove that she belonged there. Her days were filled with lessons, practice, and homework, while her nights were spent working at the restaurant to pay rent and support her mother. It was exhausting, but she refused to give up. The pressure was intense. Sometimes Sarah felt like she was being pulled in two directions. Her co-workers at the restaurant began to treat her differently. Some were supportive, bringing her coffee during breaks and offering kind words. Others were distant or even hostile, whispering about how she thought she was too good for her old job now. Leonard Kane's presence still lingered in her life. He showed up at some of her performances, sitting in the back with a proud smile. It made Sarah uncomfortable. She wasn't sure if he was there to support her or to remind her of the night he had put her on the spot, but she decided to focus on her music and ignore him. One evening, after a particularly difficult practice session, Sarah received a call that shook her. Her mother's condition had worsened, and she was admitted to the hospital. Sarah rushed to her side, feeling helpless and scared. The thought of losing her mother terrified her, but she also knew she had to stay strong for both of them. In the hospital room, Sarah held her mother's hand and played soft melodies on a small keyboard she had brought. The music seemed to soothe her mother even when words failed. Sarah realized then that music was not just her dream. It was her strength and her comfort in the darkest times. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Sarah managed hospital visits, classes, work shifts, and practice sessions. She felt exhausted but determined. Her teachers noticed her struggle and offered support, arranging for her to have a more flexible schedule. The academy also helped her connect with local musicians and organizers. She started performing at small concerts and charity events. Each performance built her confidence and reputation. People began to see her not just as the waitress from the restaurant, but as a talented musician with a story of resilience and hope. Despite the challenges, Sarah's music touched the hearts of many. Audiences were moved by the depth of feeling in her playing. She became a symbol of perseverance, showing that it's never too late to follow your dreams, no matter the obstacles. Meanwhile, Leonard Kane's attitude shifted. Seeing her grow in fame and respect, he tried to insert himself into her career more openly. He offered sponsorship deals and invitations to high-profile events. Sarah was cautious, but also recognized that she needed opportunities. She decided to work with him, but only on her own terms. Their relationship was complicated. Kane was still arrogant and demanding, but Sarah learned to stand her ground. She refused to let him control her or belittle her again. Slowly, she gained confidence not only in her music, but also in herself. One day, Sarah received an invitation to perform at a prestigious concert hall, the kind of place she had only dreamed of as a child. It was the biggest opportunity of her life, and she knew it could change everything. As she prepared for the concert, Sarah reflected on her journey. She thought about her father, who had first inspired her to play piano, and her mother, who had supported her through every hardship. She remembered the long years of waiting tables, hiding her talent, and struggling to survive. And now, here she was, ready to step into the light. On the night of the concert, the hall was filled with people. Friends, family, teachers, and even some from the restaurant had come to support her. The lights dimmed, and Sarah took her place at the grand piano. Her fingers moved over the keys with skill and passion, filling the room with music that told her story of loss, pain, hope, and triumph. The audience was captivated. They listened in silence, feeling every emotion in the music. When the last note faded, the applause was thunderous. Sarah stood and bowed, tears of joy streaming down her face. In that moment, she knew she had found her place in the world. She had faced humiliation, loss, and doubt, but she had never given up. Her music was her voice, and it had finally been heard. Sarah's journey was far from over, but she had taken the first steps toward a new life. A life where her dreams could finally come true. After the big concert night, Sarah's life seemed to open up like a beautiful new book, full of blank pages ready for her to write her own story. The applause, the smiles, and the tears she shed on that stage had changed everything. But as she would soon learn, success was only the beginning. The real journey was about what came next, the challenges of staying true to herself while navigating a world she had only ever dreamed about. In the days following the concert, Sarah found herself in a whirlwind of new experiences. Invitations poured in from music festivals, charity events, and even TV shows. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from fans and professionals eager to work with her. The video from the party was still viral, but now it was joined by footage from her concert and other performances. People all over the world were talking about the waitress who had become a rising star. Despite all the excitement, Sarah stayed grounded. She remembered the years of struggle, the long nights working at the restaurant, and the sacrifices her mother had made. She knew success wasn't just about fame or money. It was about passion, hard work, and the love for music that had never left her heart. Sarah continued her lessons at the academy, pushing herself harder than ever. She wanted to grow as a musician and a person. Each new piece she learned, every challenging technique she mastered, made her feel more alive. She practiced not just for the applause, but because playing the piano was her way of expressing everything. She felt joy, sorrow, hope, and courage. Her relationship with Leonard Kane remained complicated. He was still a powerful man used to getting what he wanted, but Sarah had learned to stand up to him. She refused to let him dictate her career or her choices. Sometimes he helped her, offering connections and resources, but Sarah always made sure she stayed in control. One afternoon, Sarah received an unexpected call. It was from a well-known music producer in the city. He had seen her videos and heard about her story. He wanted to meet her and discuss the possibility of recording an album. Sarah was nervous, but excited. Recording an album was a dream she had almost given up on. The meeting went well. The producer was impressed by her talent and her passion. He wanted to help her share her music with a wider audience, to take her from being just a local sensation to a true professional artist. Sarah agreed to work with him, knowing it would be a lot of hard work but also a chance to reach new heights. The next few months were intense. Sarah balanced recording sessions, practice, concerts, and her job at the restaurant. She had to manage her time carefully, often practicing late into the night after long days of work. It was exhausting, but she never complained. Every note she played was a step closer to her dream. Her mother's health remained fragile, and Sarah made sure to spend as much time as possible with her. Music had brought comfort to both of them during difficult times, and Sarah often played gentle melodies to soothe her mother's pain. Those moments reminded her why she was fighting so hard, to create a better life for both of them. At the same time, Sarah faced new challenges. The music industry was competitive and sometimes harsh. There were moments when she doubted herself, when the pressure and expectations felt overwhelming. She missed the simplicity of her old life, but she also knew she could never go back. Sarah's friends and family were her greatest support. They reminded her of her worth and helped her stay focused. Her teachers encouraged her to keep improving, pushing her to explore new styles and techniques. Slowly but surely, Sarah's confidence grew. One day she received news that made her heart race. She had been invited to perform at a prestigious international music festival. It was a huge honor and a chance to show the world what she could do. Sarah knew this was the opportunity she had been waiting for. Preparation for the festival was intense. She practiced for hours every day, perfecting her pieces and learning new ones. The pressure was immense, but Sarah was determined to give the performance of her life. She thought about the journey she had taken, from the waitress who was forced to play at a party, to a musician who now had the chance to shine on a global stage. The festival day arrived. Sarah stood backstage, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. When she stepped onto the stage, the bright lights and large audience made her heart pound. But as she sat down at the grand piano, everything else faded away. The music took over, and Sarah poured all her emotions into every note. The audience was mesmerized. They listened to her story told through music, the struggles, the pain, the hope, and the triumph. When the last note played, the crowd erupted in applause. Sarah smiled, tears of joy streaming down her face. After the festival, Sarah's career blossomed. She recorded her album, which received critical acclaim and touched the hearts of many listeners. She traveled to perform in different cities and countries, sharing her gift and inspiring others. Through it all, Sarah remained humble and true to herself. She never forgot where she came from or the people who helped her along the way. Her music became not just a career but a mission, to bring hope and beauty to a world that sometimes seemed dark and unfair. Looking back, Sarah knew that night at the party, the moment she was forced to play the piano, had been a turning point. What had started as a cruel joke had revealed her true talent and changed her life forever. She had faced humiliation and doubt, but she had risen above it with courage and grace. Sarah's story was one of resilience and hope. It showed that sometimes the most unexpected moments can lead to the greatest opportunities, and that no matter where you come from, with passion and determination, you can create a future full of light.